In the description is a link for more information about the Quileute tribe and the mission to move to higher ground. The Quileute tribe lives in La Push, Washington, in a tsunami zone, which could wipe out the people and their culture. The mission behind Move to Higher Ground is to relocate and move to an area which is safer, protecting their people, culture, and practices. Why does this matter? Well, Twilight has been around for nearly 2 decades, and despite culturally appropriating the Quileute tribe, the tribe has never received a cent out of the franchise. A franchise worth $3.3 billion, and that's in box office revenue. Not only has the tribe's culture been appropriated, but they were given no notice of the franchise's existence, and they were never given the opportunity to decline or approve permissions for this use. So check out the link in the description, and if you are able, consider donating. Also, be sure to share the link. Thanks, everyone! When I say that Twilight is one of my favorite horror films, it tends to bring about confusion, to which point we'll have a back and forth about how I'm Ron, and sure, I've been Ron before, but this isn't one of those times. So instead of continuing to have this tired conversation over and over again, I'm just gonna make this video so I can show this to people instead and save myself the breath. Presenting the horrification of Twilight. Let's take it back to the beginning. The year is 1764, and Horace Walpole has written The Castle of Otranto, a novel which is credited as the first Gothic horror novel, at least by Western standards. Before that, horror is really hard to pin down because it's always kind of existed. You know, stories around the campfire, legends of man-eating snakes to scare children into staying away from trees, or women in lakes who will take you if you drink the water. Horror stories in that regard are cautionary tales. They're meant to frighten you into being safe, and that is a key aspect of the genre. Not the safety part necessarily, but the frightened part. Unfortunately, the horror genre is notoriously difficult to define, and although there are many definitions, it doesn't quite have a set one because it's a feeling more than anything else. Here's how Wikipedia defines the horror genre. The Westport Library definition also aligns with this one. So it's safe to say that horror relies on feelings of terror. Again, the frightened part. So what makes the Castle of Otranto so terrifying? Well, books aren't necessarily scary. It's hard to make a piece of paper scary, but it is set in a haunted castle, and it's the overall vibe of the novel itself that sets a precedent for the Gothic genre, at least as we know it today, which is exemplified by this short passage here. It mainly takes inspiration from Gothic architecture for the book's setting, hence where it gets the name Gothic. And although the genre started with horror, Gothic fiction has another side to it: romance. Now, if you've seen my video from over a year ago about reading some of Bella's favorite books, then you'll know about the connection between Twilight and the Brontes, whom Bella loves. In short, the entirety of Twilight is owed to the work of Charlotte Bronte's novel Jane Eyre, with the book Eclipse taking specific inspiration from Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, which is Bella's ultimate favorite book. And both of these stories are part of the Gothic genre. It's all connected. And get this, a subgenre of Gothic fiction is vampire literature, which Twilight literally is, and they're a very important aspect of the story. When it comes to monsters, vampires, zombies, ghosts, and werewolves all make for interesting creatures because they are humans who have had their humanity stripped from them. Twilight explores this idea by putting vampires who are so completely removed from humanity into a setting where they must fit in around humans. Unlike the usual horror monster, these vampires are viewed as redeemable within the story. They are shown to be romantic and attractive. They are able to make meaningful connections and display acts of loyalty. Some don't even consume human blood. Even the novel detracts from the literary vampire, an example being Dracula, who preys on the victim, leaves a mark, and sneaks off into the night. Instead of burning in the sun, these vampires sparkle. They don't have to drink human blood, and they don't transform into bats. And for a story involving vampires, There isn't a lot of blood. In horror, the monster poses some kind of threat, and the characters typically try to avoid them. In Twilight, however, Bella is clearly very attracted to the monster and does not see him as something to be feared despite the clear threat he imposes on her. In the end, they even marry, which is uncommon for a horror story. But Edward isn't the only vampire. And Twilight does contain a lot of standard horror characteristics. Monsters, a small town, teenage protagonist, stalking, violence, danger, suspense, and a body count. Fear of death and the thought of dying, in addition to love, are pretty pivotal themes within the story. And the film does an especially great job of building suspense around these attacks. Sorry, editing me here. I just had to jump in real quick because, oh my god, I had an epiphany and I need to talk about it. Okay, so there's this trope in horror films, especially in slashers, where the final girl is usually somebody who has never had relations with another person. Now, in Twilight, Bella's life is threatened a lot. That's pretty much that's the story. That's it. It's just threatened a lot. But she always survives, hence why there is a next story. However, in Breaking Dawn, in the books and then in part 1 in the films, Bella temporarily dies, and then her heart stops, and then she vampire, But before that, she dies, and that's after she had relations with Edward that she dies. Now, it's no secret that Stephenie Meyer, the author and creator of the Twilight universe, is a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, but I can't believe I never considered this before. And perhaps that is a bit of a stretch, but I don't know, it does kind of seem like yet another trait that the series adopts from the horror genre, albeit one that I personally strongly dislike, but I digress. Alright, back on track. Bye, editing me. Okay, let's dissect a scene. And right off the bat, we have this brilliant juxtaposition between this false imagined horror versus this very real threat. And right there's that perspective shift, and now we have it confirmed that he is not alone. I think what makes this scene so effective is its camera work. It uses the horror technique of dramatic irony, using the audience's knowledge of these attacks to build anxiety for the character's inevitable demise. The music in this scene also elevates the suspense and intensity. It starts with an unsettling crescendo, but as it continues, there is no music, just sounds of unseen vampires moving around, and the lack of other sounds creates this feeling of isolation and vulnerability, and then we watch as the character meets his demise. And this is also the first time that we actually get to see Laurent, James, and Victoria on screen. And in this scene that we've just seen now, they are still just moving blurs. We don't really know who or what they are yet. Now, something to note about Twilight is it does tell everything through a romantic lens. So it romanticizes its atrocities rather than emphasizing gore and violence. It's very similar to Netflix's adaptation of You. And I bring up You because the book and show's very own protagonist, Joe, was based off of the ideal man that fiction has fed to us. This includes Twilight's Edward Cullen, to play with the argument that if these character traits were put on a random guy and told from his perspective, it plays out like a horror. And it's absolutely terrifying and unsettling. Now, something I will note is You falls more into the psychological thriller genre, but it does take horror elements, and it is somewhat similar to how you could see Edward Cullen. Now, Twilight also plays into fantasy and melodrama, and it's all encompassed in a romantic lens, but as a young adult story with many Gothic elements, it is still a member of the horror family, and I personally welcome it with open arms. But please leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a marvelous week. Catch you later.